Doors be open. On ouvre les portes. Merci. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. I'm sorry.
Mr. Speaker, today is a sad day for our Conservative family and for our parliamentary family. Our colleague and friend Jim Hillier passed away very suddenly this morning, and I thank you for your kindness this morning. This has come as a shock to all of us who knew Jim and worked closely with him and was a friend. But most of all, Mr. Speaker, our thoughts and prayers are with his family, with his wife Livy, and with his kids who have these fantastic names: London, Taylor, Asia, and Nation. I spoke with her this morning, and she wanted me to pass along her thanks for all of the kindness.
I would also like to offer my sincere condolences to the family and those close to Jim.
Speech because Jim spoke very good French, and he was very proud of that. I know that the thoughts of every member of this House are with his family today, and I've heard from many of you, all of us have, and I want to thank you for your kindness. I want Canadians to know that Jim was so proud to represent his constituents from the riding of Medicine Hat, Cardston, Warner, and before that, the riding of Lethbridge, where he was first elected in 2011. Now, he described the job of being his MP as the job that he had wanted his whole life. But before being elected, Jim was an entrepreneur. Like so many Westerners, he was very proud to make a living in the natural resources sector. He also brought with him to Parliament an understanding and a great sympathy for the concerns of regular, hardworking Canadians, and it really showed. When you talked to Jim, it was like talking to a neighbor. It was clear that he loved his life, he loved his wife, he loved his community, and he loved his job. He was very open, very honest, and a very humble guy, and he had a goofy sense of humor. And you know, he was the kind of guy that you were proud represented you, and you felt you could approach. And he took his job very seriously. And as I said, he had a goofy sense of humor. He had something funny he said in the media recently. He was from Southern Alberta. That says something about him. And he was talking about Donald Trump. He was asked about his views on Donald Trump, and he said, well, where I come from is redneck, and we're not that redneck. He was a funny guy, but he was also a fighter. Many people here may not know, but he had faced and beaten leukemia earlier in his life, and he sought to help others by becoming a spokesman for the Canadian Cancer Society. A lot of us here know that he had a very serious ski accident, and after his ski accident, he hurt his leg quite badly. He had to use a little scooter, the kind of scooter that senior citizens use, but he was only 41, so we teased him a lot about that. And in fact, one of the House of Commons security guards, Frankie, told me this morning his memory of Jim was that he kept threatening to give him a speeding ticket for his scooter. There were a lot of issues that Jim was passionate about. Here in Ottawa, he fought for a stronger justice system. He sponsored some tough on crime legislation, and he was really passionate about keeping his community safe and respecting the rights of victims. Now, he worked hard, and he had a family, so he didn't have a lot of spare time, but he did have some hobbies. And when he was here, he used to play hockey with his MP colleagues, and he also volunteered for minor hockey back in his riding. At home, he was a very devoted dad, but he was also a music lover. I didn't know this myself because it didn't fit my view of Jim, but he was an amazing violin player. And he played in the Lethbridge Symphony, and he was even a singer. Some of you, I wanted to say, Mr. Speaker, some of you may have not had a chance to get to know Jim because you're new to the House, but that's okay. Your thoughts and prayers mean just as much to his family, so I thank you for your support on their behalf. Thank you to all of the MPs for the kindness that you've showed to those friends of Jim's in the House. In particular, Mr. Speaker, thank you for the arrangements that you've made for today. It's my hope that in the coming days, the pain that we feel will be replaced by the great memory of Jim as a friend and as a father. and is a great public servant. This Parliament is better for having had Jim serve it, and we're better to have known him. So thank you to everyone for your kindness today.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is with great sadness that I speak today to pay tribute to the member for the riding Medicine Hat, Cardston Warner, Jim Hillier.
To begin by thanking the Honourable Leader of the Opposition for her warm words and for her telling many aspects of Jim that will come as a surprise to many of us here, including myself. This is a moment where we should all reflect on the fact that we don't know each other as well as we should in this House. We learn of each other through comments made in the media, through speeches that we give or have to give in the House, but we don't often actually dig into the lives and the stories that each and every one of us bring to this place. And certainly if today's tragic experience, which we all share of having lost a member of the family, is to have any positive outcomes, let it be that we do take a little more time in the occasions afforded to us, either on hockey rinks or soccer fields or after work in the watering holes around Ottawa, that we do take a little time to get to know each other a little more, because we are bound together, all of us, in service to this great country. Like all of us, I learned of Jim's death this morning with shock and disbelief. His youth and the suddenness of his passing have blanketed the Hill with a weighty sadness today. And I know that this heaviness will remain for quite some time. For while we sat on opposite sides of this House, we were all part of the same parliamentary family. We are all here, each and every one of us, in service to this great country, and that certainly was the case with Jim. He was a valued member of his party, a hard-working public servant, and a strong voice for his community.
We will all remember how he served Canadians with great passion and conviction.
Jim's presence will be missed on the Hill today and all days. We will stand united and support one another in our grief. On behalf of the Government of Canada and all Canadians, I want to extend my deepest, most heartfelt sympathies to Jim's wife, Livy, and to their 4 children. Know that your husband and your dad served our country well. May you find strength in the faith that sustains you during the difficult days ahead. If this House and this country is made strong by the broad range of people and voices that serve it, then this morning we have certainly been diminished by Jim's passing. Repose en paix.
Rest in peace, Jim.
L'honorable député d'Out.
The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Speaker, it was with great sadness that we learned today of Jim's passing, and it is with equal sadness that I rise today to pay tribute to that colleague of ours, Jim Hillier, a husband, a father, and a parliamentarian taken from us far too soon. Catherine and I wish to extend our heartfelt condolences to his wife, Livy, and their 4 children. Notre famille parlementaire.
Our parliamentary family is in mourning today following the passing of our colleague Jim Hillier, and I want to express my very deepest condolences to his wife Livy and his 4 children.
Passionate in his political convictions, who enjoyed overwhelming support from his constituents. His voice will be sadly missed. He helped the people of his riding so well that his office was even honored with an award for exemplary service. And his remarks about that work are a tribute to his conviction that people matter. Politics, Jim said, can really be about making the world a better place. He was also given an Indigenous name by the Blackfoot Cultural Society, Api Stamik, meaning white buffalo bull, for his strong work with First Nations. Jim leaves behind a loving family, a legacy of hard-working public service, and a profound commitment to his faith. These are qualities that will define his memory in this place. On behalf of all members of the NDP, I want to extend our deepest condolences to his entire family, his constituents, and to every one of his Conservative caucus colleagues on this extremely sad day. He will be deeply missed, and may he rest in peace.
Honorable député de Rivière-du-Nord.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Loup. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like all of us here in this House, I was saddened to learn this morning of the death of the member for Medicine Hat, Cardston Warner, Jim Hillier. On my behalf and on behalf of the Bloc Québécois, I would like to offer my sincere condolences to his family, his wife, his 4 children, his loved ones, his constituents, and the members of his caucus. The passing of our colleague reminds us of how deeply human the work is that we do here in the House. Behind our debates and our public roles, there are human beings who gather here to debate different ideas, but always with respect around an essential value, which is that of democracy. Jim Hillier left us in the exercise of his duties, far from his family, working hard for his world, for his region. My sincere condolences to his family.
The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to all colleagues here today, and particularly condolences to all my friends in the Conservative caucus. I was deeply affected by the words of the Leader of the official opposition as we adjust to the enormous shock of losing a friend and colleague, and I regarded Jim Hillier as a friend. We worked together here, and thank goodness there are enough nonpartisan moments that I had the great pleasure of knowing him. I think his strong sense of duty is exemplified by the fact that he insisted on being here for Budget Day. And his commitment to this place and to his constituents is unquestionable. I don't need to trespass on your time very long. I think we share what the Right Honourable Prime Minister said. We in this place are community, and it would be good to know each other and love each other better. But we are bound together today, recognizing the inevitable, the fragility of life, the certainty of death, and for many of us, hope for a world to come and faith. All we can really do is hope that we have a life well lived in that blink of time allotted to us. And in this, our friend Jim Hillier excelled. With his wife, Livy, with 4 beautiful children, London and Taylor and Asia and Nation. That family must know that we send them an enormous amount of love and condolence in this moment of their grief, which we share. Rest in peace, dear friend Jim Hillier.
I invite all honorable colleagues to stand to observe a moment of silence in honor of our dear colleague, Jim Hillier. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. The government House Leader is rising, I believe, on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise with a great deal of sadness given the tragic news of the passing of our colleague Jim Hillier. I want to add my voices to those of colleagues who have spoken and express my sympathies to his wife and children. Mr. Speaker, we've had discussions amongst the parties, and it's my hope that we can dispose of 2 quick procedural matters before we adjourn the House today. So, Mr. Speaker, as I said, there have been discussions amongst the parties, and I believe if you seek it, you'll find unanimous consent for the following motion: that notwithstanding any standing order or usual practice of the House, on Thursday, March 24th, 2016, the House shall consider Bill C-7, an act to amend the Public Service Labour Relations Act, the Public Service Labour Relations and Employment Board Act, and other acts, and to provide for certain other measures at second reading, and when no member rises to speak or at the expiry of the time provided for government orders, whichever is earlier, all questions necessary to dispose of the second reading stage of the bill shall deem be put, and the motion for second reading of the bill is deemed adopted on division.
Does the Honourable Minister have the unanimous consent of the House to move the motion? Does not have unanimous consent to move the motion. Does the Honourable Government House Leader have another request?
Mr. Speaker, I find that regrettable on a day like today that we're not able to get unanimous consent. Therefore, I move, seconded by the Minister of Justice, that this House do now adjourn.
Mr. LeBlanc, seconded by Ms. Wilson-Raybould, moves that, notwithstanding any standing order or usual practice of the House, on Thursday, March 24, 2016, the House shall consider Bill C-7, an act to amend the public. Mr. LeBlanc, seconded by Ms. Wilson-Raybould, moves that this House do now adjourn. It's the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion. Yes. Carried. Yes. Until tomorrow at 10 a.m.